Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Our deepest condolence to Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. Every year, when the month of Muharram comes, we can't even imagine the pain a Imam goes through. This is your host, Sister Zinat. With me, I have a special guest of honor from United States of America, Alima Maryam Muaddal. Assalamu alaikum, sister. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah, I'm good. How are you? How's it going?
Thank you so much, sister.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My name is Maryam Muaddal. I am an American Iranian. I graduated from Cal Poly Pomona in accounting. I taught at an Islamic school for a year and a half, and then I moved to Iran. I've been studying in Qom and the Hawza for several years now. I finished my bachelor's degree in Islamic philosophy, and currently I'm working on my master's.
Thank you so much, sister, for being part of the studio. Last time we were discussing about this question that still we have to complete the points. That is, what did we learn from the event of Karbala? And we went through the points, alhamdulillah. That was the first was being punctual for salat. Second is loving our fellow brothers. Third is selflessness. Fourth is success is not at the edge. Fifth one is hardship. Sixth one is patience. Seventh one is faithfulness. And eighth one, we were actually discussing that we have to continue today, that is standing against oppressors.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum ya Abu Abdullah wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we're talking about what are the different points that we can learn from Karbala, the event of Ashura. And the eighth point was that we learned that we need to stand up against the oppressors. And we're discussing why is it that Imam Hussein had so much bravery, that he had no fear to stand up against the oppressors. And we're discussing the relationship that us humans and everything in the world we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And understanding this relationship helps us understand that for us not to be fearless and try to understand how the system works. And I was discussing how things are different, that Allah is responsible for everything. He is our Rabb. He is the one who raises us. He is the one who gives us sustenance. He is the one who provides us money. He provides us health. He's given us everything, and He's raising us every single second. And at every single point of time, we are completely reliant upon Allah. The same way an image of an apple in your mind is completely reliant upon you.
Yes.
We are reliant upon Allah. And if we cease to exist, that image of that apple will cease to exist. It's the same thing with us to Allah, right? So we are completely in the mercy of Allah. If Allah wills, God forbid, then for us to not exist, we won't exist.
Yes,
right?
we won't exist.
So we're completely reliant upon Allah. And I was trying to give more examples about this just so people can understand, because understanding this relationship helps a lot. It's not, when we think about for example, creating this mouse, it's the people who made this, they might have it was on plastic, or I don't know what else they used for this. They had the material, they shaped it, and they assembled it, right? But essentially, the creators of this mouse didn't make every single thing. They still had to use, I don't know if it's wood or plastic, all that stuff, it already existed on Earth. So they just assembled it. They didn't create it. Creating means to create basically out of nothing, right? And so we see that's the relationship that we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's important for us to understand. And so the same way that when we get hungry, right, we eat, right? That food, this apple that I eat, makes us satiated.
Yes.
It makes us full, right? Do I say the apple made me full, or do I say Allah made me full? We can say both made us full,
Yes.
right? Allah essentially is the Ar-Razzaq.
Everything is connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right? Yeah. But on a different level, right? I can eat an apple, or I can have a hamburger, or I can have a pizza. It's still not going to make me full, but they're just different things. This is on a horizontal level, but essentially Allah is the one who's
actually providing us, because He's a sustainer.
He's a sustainer. So that's our relationship with Allah. And so the Imams really understood this relationship. Hazrat Musa, the Prophet, really understood this relationship. And when they understand, okay, everything is reliant upon Allah, and they're doing everything in His way, they're responsible, what do they have to fear anymore? And so understanding this relationship really helps with being able to stand up, right, to an oppressor. Nothing's scary anymore when you recognize that everything is at Allah's in Allah's disposal. That He has full control of everything. So when Allah in your mind is the greatest thing, He's the greatest being, He's the all-powerful, the all-sustainer, the creator, the Rab, everything and every aspect. Essentially, He's the one who controls, and He has everything at the tip of His hand. Yazid means nothing to you.
Yes.
Yazid's nothing. It's not.
First,
he's not
the point that you said, we have to first strongly believe in that point in every aspect of our life, whether we are facing some problems or difficulties or happiness or anything. Then Yazid will be nothing for us, definitely, because Imam Hussein had that kind of ideology, a perception. Usually, practically, let me speak up, sister. If we just tell people, can you join the protest for this person? Can you sign a petition? They totally deny. Say, oh, I'm scared. I don't want to be part of politics. I don't want to do it. People run away. When you're talking about standing against oppressor, that we learned from Bibi Zainab Salamullah alayha and the entire family, especially the power of the woman during the event of Karbala. Women usually in this, there are ladies who do stand up, but there are ladies who totally say, oh, I'm not interested in politics. I'm not going to speak out of what is happening. I'm not going to be part of any kind of rallies or protests or standing of any petition. I don't care. They cry for Bibi Zainab, but they don't want to stand up practically. So this is what we learn from Bibi Zainab, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Stand against oppressors of your time.
Exactly.
Speak out. So this is the message you're giving.
Yeah. And so it's that connection and that understanding. If we really bring it in our lives, as you said, standing up to
would be very easy.
Very easy.
Yes.
It's understanding everything in its own place, right? If we understand Allah's relationship with us, if you understand how powerful He is, why do we say Allahu Akbar? Right?
Yes.
We say Allahu Akbar means what?
Allah is great.
Great. But what do you mean by this great? What does this greatness mean? What do you think?
Greatness in everything. He's supreme.
Supreme, right? It's not in size, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have a
Yeah.
size. So sometimes people think, oh, like it means in size. First of all, He's not material to have a size. So we can't say He's greater in size. But it means He's greater in His attributes. When it comes down to He's the Ar-Razzaq, He's the sustainer. He's greater, the greatest sustainer. When you say He has qudrat, He has power, He is greatest in power. When you say He is Alim, He's the knowledgeable, He has the most knowledge. All these aspects, in every single attribute, you say that He's the top of the line, right? That He's, when it comes to kindness, He's the most kindness. He's Rahim, He's Rahman, He's all these things. You bring that into play and you're like, wow, like everything else becomes small in this world. And Yazid means nothing. Any oppressor means nothing. And so it's having that, understanding that, and constantly reminding yourself. And that's why we have the 5-time prayers. That's why we have to remind ourselves, like, and we start with Allahu Akbar in our prayer, right? We like throw our hands up and we're like pushing up everything behind us, and we're entering the state of salat and remembering, oh, Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater than everything. So that's important, and that's where the Ahlul Bayt would get this. This was a constant remindance that they have during their prayers, during their worships, all of that. It's constant reminding them, hey, Allah is the greatest. Allah is the greatest. There's nothing to worry about, right? The night before Ashura, right? They all prayed. They were standing up in salat and worship and all of that. And that cleanses the soul, and it reminds us, oh, that cleansed their soul, and it reminded them, oh, what's the purpose of all of this, right? And so their purpose of standing, so their purpose was to fulfill their duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The purpose of Musa standing up to Pharaoh was standing up to the Pharaoh because he forgot Allah. He did tughyan, he transgressed.
Yes.
And he was oppressing other people, and also he forgot Allah. He forgot the whole purpose, and he made himself the Rabb. He said, "Ana Rabbukul A'la," that I am your Lord. This aspect of Pharaoh saying this, it's not something that, okay, just Pharaoh said it. No, each king, all the different societies in different times, they are always oppressors of the time. And in some sense, they were saying, oh, we're your king.
And they knew very well that they are not the Lord, but still they want to fool the people by saying, I'm your Lord. And this is the biggest example of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, who Pharaoh was so dangerous, but still he said, open my chest in his du'as, right? And then he stood against Pharaoh of the time, saying that you are not the Lord, Allah is the Lord, and I am the prophet of God. And this is not at all easy. And at the time of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the way Imam Hussein stood up against Yazid, so this is the prayers, actually, we have to say, Ya Khudaya, please open a chest so that we can help the Imam of our time, Imam Zamana alayhi salam, and stand against your oppressors. So by making the du'as, we have to start this journey towards our Imam first.
Exactly. And so we see that when you look at the story of Hazrat Zainab alayhi salam, and she says that وَمَا رَأَيْتُ إِلَّا جَمِيلًا, I have not seen anything but beauty. It's like, why is it that she's able to say that, right?
Yes.
And then she's able to stand up to Yazid and be like, this is what it is. And she basically calls all the things out. Like she calls him out on the things that he's doing and the horrible things he's doing. And it's interesting, like, how is that she's able to see it is that she's seeing all of this from Allah. She sees that, okay, this event of Karbala was an opportunity for them to grow. It was an opportunity to give a sacrifice for Allah. It was an opportunity of her to give everything up for Allah. Again, in the event of Karbala, right, Hazrat Zainab goes to Imam Hussein once he's killed, and asks, oh Allah, like, and she lifts the body up and says, oh Allah, like, accept this from us. Why she's able to see it is just like, okay, this is me giving up everything for you, Allah. This is what you've wanted. You've planned this in this way. So, and this is the way we've gotten close to you, in a sense. And for them, it was a blessing. For the mu'mins, these tragedies or things that happen, they are a blessing for a believer. Why? Because it brings them closer to Allah. When shaitan comes and tries to mess with the awliya Allah, the people who are very close to Allah, with the Ahlul Bayt, when shaitan comes, it's an opportunity for them to be able to put the shaitan aside. It's a struggle.
Yes.
But it's an opportunity to get closer. And Zainab again saw this as an opportunity. And this applies to all of us, that in each and everything that happens in our life, when things go wrong, God forbid you end up in a divorce, God forbid you lose a child, God forbid you end up with the coronavirus,
yes.
whatever, it's still an opportunity. You don't know, maybe you got the virus because Allah wanted to clean your soul, or maybe it was an opportunity for you to get closer to Allah. Maybe you had to go through it so you would grow in some way. There's an opportunity there, and you have to see it that way. And I remember for me, I know seeing things like when things go wrong or things don't go necessarily my way, what it's really helped me is to think, okay, this is an opportunity. Let's get it. Let's see how I can tackle this. I see it like, okay, it's a wrestle. Like, I have to wrestle with this problem until I win, right? Or at least I try my best until there's nothing for me.
That's a good courage that you are giving, that if you're facing some difficulty or problems in your life, don't panic. Don't be unthankful. Don't get into depression. Just say, oh, this is an opportunity that's given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to me. I'm going to handle this, and I'm going to go one level more stronger, like video games, you go on the next stage, which is tougher and tougher and tougher.
Exactly.
And you're making yourself more tough to handle the different kind of situation. If you take life in this way, life is going to be so easy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so again, like when it comes to Zainab alayhi salam, when it comes to Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, when they're dealing with the oppressors, they're taking it on without being worried, and they're like, no, this is an opportunity for me to grow as well. Even though obviously no one likes to deal with an oppressor, but it's an opportunity. I'm going to take this on, and I'm not going to be scared, because I'm doing this for Allah, and Allah will help me back, inshallah. So, inshallah, Allah gives us the opportunity to deal with all the pharaohs
by
of our
opening
time.
a chest and making us courageous and brave, so that we can help the Imam of our time and become his true companion and the closest companion, inshallah.
Exactly, inshallah. So the next point is tawakkul ala Allah, reliance upon Allah, right? So tawakkul ala Allah is that when you rely upon Allah. There's a hadith from Imam Baqir alayhi salam that says that when you rely upon Allah, it's impossible to lose. You will never lose. If you rely upon Allah, you're doing something, you won't lose at all. Now, if you look at the time of the Prophet, you see that some of the battles they would win, and some of them they would lose, right? But the Prophet would never lose hope.
Yes.
Right? He never lost his spirit. He never was like, oh, like we lost. Like, because all of his tawakkul, all of his reliance was on Allah, and he knew that the only thing that could actually help him is Allah, because everything is at his disposal. Again, remember, vertically, horizontally. Vertically speaking, Allah is taking care of everything, and He's the manifester of everything, and it's in His hands if they're going to lose or if they're going to win, right? And sometimes some of those battles, maybe they needed to lose so that the ummah, the Muslims, would learn from that and grow, right? So sometimes so when we're going in life, sometimes again we won't become successful in every endeavor in our life, every problem, every hardship. Sometimes you'll lose. Maybe you'll get corona, God forbid, and or someone in your family gets corona and they die, God forbid. So sometimes these things will happen, but they're necessary for you, right?
Yes.
For like I remember with me, when my brother passed away, it was very difficult. But after going through that for a year or whatever it was that we were grieving, I really realized that it was a blessing in disguise for me, because it helped me grow and become a better person. When you go through something like that, a lot of times you become more kind, you become more compassionate, you have more empathy for other people. You're willing to listen to other people, hear their stories out. Things will change, and that's change something you need. Again, I remember we talked about how we're kind of like that clay under Allah's hands.
Yes, yes.
Allah's molding us, He's changing us, right? So these things will happen for us to change. It's gonna hurt.
Yes.
Most likely it will hurt. Not always, but sometimes it will hurt. But what we need to do is do tawakkul. Like, okay, oh Allah, like, I'm going to rely upon you.
Because man was created in hardship. That's what the Quran says, right? So we have the tendency, we have the potential to take, we have the tolerance level to take all this kind of hardship. Because Allah in the Holy Quran has says that I will not test you more than your tolerance level. That means if we have some kind of test from Allah, we have that level of tolerance in us.
Yeah, exactly.
We can do it.
And again, like you see with the story of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, he basically, if you look at his life, it's so, I mean, he went through so much difficulty. He had to give up the Khilafat, and it's so sad because he becomes so qarib. He's essentially very lonely. There are people at his time were calling him Muzill al-Mu'minin, the person who belittles the believers. I mean, he's just so qarib, he's so mazlum, he's so
Imam Hassan
yes. And you look at it, and it's just like, yet at the same time, you see that he's still strong.
Yes.
It doesn't bother them that he has to be like that. This is an interesting thing. When you're an abd of Allah, when you're a servant of Allah, you're soft. In the sense that you're, actually, the root of the word, I don't remember the Arabic, but I remember my teacher saying this. It means that, you know, like on a desert, when you walk on a desert, you leave footprints. And it's like,
yes,
you soften the sand up, and people will walk on your footprints just because it's easier to walk on. It softens the path up for them. And that's what the root of the word of ubudiyat comes from, softness. And it's interesting because usually when we think about believers, we think about people who are very harsh. Yet it's not actually, we see when it comes to the imams, they were actually accepting of whatever the situation was, and they would accept, okay, sometimes they would have to lose. Sometimes it was with Imam Hassan that he had to give up the Khilafat. Sometimes with Imam Hussein, like you see, okay, he's going to fight. Sometimes with Imam Ali, okay, he didn't have the Khilafah, and then he had the Khilafah. So you see these different stages, yet they didn't give up. They still had that strength and that honor and that courage, and they didn't stop. They still looked and, okay, this is what my duty is, I'm going to do it. Because your duty will shift. It's time to time, second to second, your duty might shift, and you have to say, okay, what is my duty now? Mm-hmm. And that's why you see, like, within the imams' times, the way they had to react to things was different because their responsibility was different, right? And so, but even with all of that, they never lost hope, they never lost courage, and they had reliance, their full tawakkul, their full reliance was on Allah.
Full trust on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they were the toughest people. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has says, that the prophets were the best of the quality, especially the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and we have to learn from them to reach the highest level, though we cannot go until them. But what you're saying is that they had the level of trust and reliance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we have in our simple life that we are living, if we have that trust on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, life is definitely going to be easy. That's the reason when the points that you were talking about, have a reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter what kind of oppressor you are living with, it's going to be easy for you to hand that kind of oppressor. And we can help the imam of a time very easily.
Exactly. So we see that the imams had tawakkul. They did whatever they could. They did their responsibility, and then they would leave it up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that's something we need to learn from our imams, is that you do your responsibility, you do whatever you can, and then you leave the rest to Allah. Whatever the outcome is, whether you lose, whether you win, whether it's Imam Hussein losing in the battle, giving up his life, when it is Imam Ali winning so many of the battles, right? He won the 3 battles. well, I mean, some of them is different. Each story is different. But let's say the Battle of Jamal, he won, or the Prophet losing some battles, winning some. It doesn't matter the outcome at the end of the day. The important part is you do your responsibility. You do your part, and then the rest of it you leave to Allah. And whatever the outcome happens, that's what's the best outcome that's supposed to happen. Because Allah will never will anything but good for a mu'min. We have hadith about that the believers, nothing will happen except that it's good for the believer. So it doesn't matter the outcome. It doesn't matter if you succeed or lose. You learn from it. You do the best you do the best you can. You learn from it, but then you move on. You don't let that to bring you down. And that's the thing. And then sometimes things will happen where sometimes you don't have any control over it, right? For example, if someone is in, like your sister is in labor, right? And there's nothing you can do, right? Except for make dua, maybe help her. But other than that, there's like pretty much nothing you can do. If she's at the hospital and you're at home, all you can do is make dua and do tawakkul. You can say, Ya Allah, like my sister's giving labor, that I can't do anything. I just leave her in your hands because you are the best of helpers, right? And you just do that and Allah will take care of it, right? And if God forbid something goes wrong, then it's okay. It's not the end of the world. And I think that's what's really important. That's why the tawakkul, when you have that tawakkul playing, your heart will be at peace, right? You won't be worried. You won't have anxiety. You won't be like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen? Like, that's why the imams were so calm.
Yes.
They had so much peace. Is that the Imam was saying is, why is it, Imam was saying during the day of Karbala, you constantly see, they say they became happier and happier and happier, right? He became more smiley. And it's like, every single second in that event, he was growing closer and closer and closer. Every person who dies, every companion, Hor goes first, and then you have all the companions.
Yes.
Each and every one of them, and then you have Ali Akbar, and then you have Ali Asghar, and then you have Abul Fazl Abbas, and then you have all this Qasim.
And the small companions who passed away, they did not take it that they have lost the battle. They have taken it that they won the battle. That's why Bibi Zainab Salamullah Alaiha said that all I saw was beauty.
Exactly.
That's the reason her wordings came, because she had the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She knew they were very successful people. And Yazid wasn't doomed and Islam was saved. That's what they were doing.
Exactly. So I remember the past summer I was at a camp and it was with youth. They were like teens, tweens ages, like around between 12, 13 to like 18-year-olds old. And I remember asking them that what is the reason why you guys play a lot of video games is that you feel like you're losing in life, but there's something you can win in a video game, so it makes you feel better. It makes you feel like, okay, I'm winning something, at least I'm doing something, right? And they turned around and they were like, yeah. And it was such a sad moment for me that they feel that way, that they feel like,
they have not achieved anything in their life.
And that's such a sad
But what is achievement? You should have asked them. What do you really mean by achievement? Having a name or a fame or a money or a car or a bungalow?
I mean, I think for everyone it's different. Each child is different depending on their parents and in terms of the school that they go to and what they're
and the marks that they get, the sports shields and trophies. That is maybe that level of achievement and that kind
everyone
of
has, depending on the family, depending on the people around their friends, like what they call achievement is different. But regardless, it's like, no, like you're an abd of Allah, you're a servant of Allah. There's no losing here. You just do tawakkul Allah. You rely upon Allah. Allah will help you. There's no losing here. So it's important. Again, when Imam Bagher says, whoever does tawakkul Allah, who relies upon Allah, they're never losers. They can never win. It's impossible to win. And so that's really important to keep in our mind, so that we never lose ourselves, that we never lose hope.
Yes, and that's the best example for not to commit suicide. The people who are depressed, who want to commit suicide, they are suicidal. If you have a belief and reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you don't even feel like suicidal, because losing things in your life, for example, losing your job, your houses, your money, your health, is actually a part of a life, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the Holy Quran, I will test you with your health, wealth, and your children. So that's a part of our life. No matter what, we will go through this kind of things. So this is not suicidal. We have to have reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No matter what kind of difficult time we are faced with, we just believe in you and we do our best and leave the rest in your hand. That's it.
Inshallah. So to get to the next point is knowing that dignity and honor is where it comes from, and that's in humility.
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 Yeah.
So in the story, it's interesting. I was reading a book from Ayatollah Jawadi Amali, and he was a known scholar here in Qom, and he was saying that in this event, when they're setting out, the caravan of Imam Hussein are setting out, we see that the way they come out is very dignified. In the story, it's narrated, the person who's narrating says that Zainab comes out and she's surrounded with all her women servants, and then Abul Faz comes and mounts her on the horse, or if it was I don't remember if it was a horse or it was a camel or whatever it was, and then Umm Kulsum come, and Abul Faz again mounts her up, and then the daughters of Imam Hussein come, and they're mounted, and then Layla comes, Layla comes with Ali Akbar, and then Ali Akbar helps her get mounted on there, and then Imam Hussein comes and asks Abul Faz al-Abbas, oh Abul Faz, like, go get my horse. So Abul Faz comes and brings her horse, and Imam Hussein gets up there, and then Abul Faz gets on his horse, and he's been told by Imam Hussein to be the flag bearer, right? And he's the one who sets in front, because apparently the way it would go is that the person who would go first in the caravan would be the flag bearer. So with so much honor, Abul Faz al-Abbas, obviously in this story, he's the most honorable person in Imam Hussein's camp. And so the person who's narrating this story is that the way that they get on there and the way that they end up like mounting on their horses and their camels, and the way they set out is just so dignified, and there's so much izzat in this honor. And if you look at it, at the same time, these people, the Ahlul Bayt, were the most humblest of people, right? They would sit down with the most poorest people, and they would have food. They didn't make a difference for them if the person was black or white or rich or poor. It didn't make any difference. These things, they were material aspects of human beings. For the imams, it was whoever was the most pious were the best, right? But for them, color didn't matter. Being a slave didn't matter, or being free didn't matter. They would sit with everyone. They would treat everyone the same. And then you have stories of Ali being at nights, he would go and do munajat and talk to Allah and make dua to Allah. And then they would find Imam Ali, what he was passed out, and they would think, oh my God, he had passed away. So they would run to Bibi Fatima al-Zahra and say, oh, Bibi Fatima al-Zahra, Imam Ali had passed away. And Fatima al-Zahra would be like, where was he? No,
he's praying, don't worry.
He was like, they'll be like, oh, he's here and he did this. And they'll be like, oh, like, this is just, he was just praying. He passed out from in the midst of his prayer. And so that's how much he recognized Allah, and he had so much fear for Allah.
He had so much humility, no matter, even he was sinless, he was humble in his prayers.
Exactly. So it boils down to this. The verse of the Quran says, Ya ayyuhan nas antum fuqara ila Allah wallahu ghaniyul hamid. All people, it says, O ayyuhan nas, you are in need of Allah, right? And Allah is the self-sufficient, is the praised one. And so at the end of the day, it's like each and every human being is in complete need of Allah. We are complete need. Our essence is this fact. And by being obedient to Allah and understanding how much we need Him, we become a servant to Allah, right? Because we recognize we need everything. Everything comes from Him, so we need to be in His service, right? Both because we need Him, and both because what's the point of living if you don't live for the best thing in the world, right? The greatest thing in the world, and that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this Ahlul Bayt, they understood their essence, they understood that they're faqir, and then because of that, they would worship Allah. They were complete servants of Allah.
Yes.
We say Ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, that Muhammad is the abd. He is the servant.
Yes.
Before he is a Rasul, he's the servant. Before he's a prophet, he's a servant. And that's their essence, and that's the identity that the Ahlul Bayt had. And this is the identity we all need to have, we all need to consider, is that we are the servants of Allah.
Yes.
And with that, being that servant and having servitude to Allah, we find dignity. Because Allah is the one who gives izzat. Allah is the one who gives honor. Allah is the one who gives all this aspect of dignity and honor. He's the one who blesses us with. And so when we become servants of Allah, He gives that to us, and we find dignity, and it's an honor to be a servant of Allah. And that's why we see to Adam, the angels Allah tells the angels, bow down to Adam, right?
Yes.
And this isn't just Adam, this is to humanity. And this is the status of Adam and Bani Adam, the children of Adam. That this is the status that we can reach, that the angels bow down to us.
Yes, well, we have to be humble. This is about humanity.
Exactly.
So thank you so much, sister. We have actually completed all the 10 points.
Alhamdulillah.
When we say what did we learn from the event of Karbala, we have learned 10 points.
Exactly.
You know, by repeating it, I would like to end it. First thing, we have to be punctual with the prayers. Second
Uphold
is
prayers.
uphold the prayers. Yes, loving our brothers, fellow brothers. Third one, selflessness. That is Isar. Fourth was a success is not at the end. You know, because people think Imam Hussein was not successful, but he definitely was. There are people who think like that. Fifth one was hardship. Sixth one was patience. Seventh one, faithfulness. Eighth one, standing against oppressors, the hardest thing. Ninth one, reliance towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And 10th one is humility, to be humble. So thank you so much, sister, for being part of this show and giving us the knowledge. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching us and being part of this show. Stay tuned for another episode. Until then, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.